Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowered Empath Entrepreneur, how to infuse feminine energy into your business and tap into your intuition to create flow and ease. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Heidi Jane. She is an empath wellness advocate, the founder of the International Institute of Advanced Intuition, as well as the Empath Alliance Tribe. And she helps empaths empower themselves in their health, their well-being, and their confidence. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to sharing any wisdom I can with your audience.
And you are such a perfect fit for us today, tapping into the empath world and the intuitive world. Could you give us a little taste of what your background is?
Well, it's quite colorful. Like a lot of women my age, when I left school, I knew I wanted to help people, but really the only options for me was nursing and teaching. So I did do a stint in palliative care nursing, but knew it wasn't a fit because I'm an empath. And so I would feel everything that my patients were feeling as they were dying, which obviously emotionally was very taxing. So I left nursing and sort of started my journey into natural health and I guess alternative therapies, and got really passionate about helping and supporting people, not only developing their intuition, but also understanding their sensitivity. Because I know for me it was really difficult as a child growing up in a family of non-sensitives who didn't understand me. So I spent most of my time feeling that there was something wrong with me, or that there was something that needed to be fixed, or something that needed to be kind of dulled down a bit. And as I'm sure you know, Sabine, empaths are very, very good at reading their environments. So we kind of change and morph ourselves to fit in. And that's what I did until as an adult, after I had my children, I thought, hang on a second, why don't I, instead of trying to hide who I am, use it as a leverage to what I actually want to do in my life and to help as many people as I can. And so then that started me again on this whole other journey about sharing information and writing books and creating courses and establishing an institute and membership sites and all the rest of it, just because I know how hard it is, as I'm sure you guys do as well. It's a tough gig being highly sensitive in this world that is so, I guess, technologically based, and it can feel quite harsh for us sometimes. So I tend to attract people to me who are really struggling, and perhaps they don't even know who they are yet. And so with my support and I guess information and what I've been through myself, I'm able to help them not only discern who they are, but that they can use their sensitivity as a strength rather than feeling like they're cursed, which is a big thing.
Do you feel like most people who come to you combine these two energies of being an intuitive and being an empath? How do you distinguish the two?
Yeah, it's a good question. So not everybody, so let me put it this way. I believe that everyone is born with some level of intuition. Yeah. So we're born naturally with that, every human being. So we have our instinct and we have our intuition. Now, not all of us are great at being able to tap into that or to understand that. Not everybody is born as an empath. So the research shows that they've done studies, and about 20% of the population they label as highly sensitive people. But in my experience, out of that 20%, maybe 5 to 10% are empaths. So it's actually a fairly small, I guess, number of the population compared to everybody that has intuition. So I know that for empaths, because we're quite feeling and we receive lots of information all the time, even though we might not know where it's coming from, which can be very confusing, people get intuition and empathy or the empathic skills confused often. And so there's a lot of people that I've met who think they're empaths, but they're actually not. They're just very deeply feeling and maybe clairsentient, or they have an ability to use their bodies to receive intuitive guidance or intuition. So there's a lot of different kind of levels to it. And then, of course, as being an empath, just like you have natural skills, maybe you're more visual, maybe you're more auditory, it's the same thing that happens with empaths. So some empaths can be quite telepathic. Some empaths feel very emotional. Some empaths are highly talented at bringing through music, for example. So we all have our different and unique skill sets within, I guess, the umbrella of being highly sensitive or being an empath. So I think it's important that when you're discovering that, you look for your uniqueness rather than trying to copy somebody else and what they're doing. Again, that's something that we kind of can fall into the trap of.
More easily as
Pardon?
Even more easily as empaths.
Yes.
Now what you've been doing, let me try and emulate that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I often say that empaths are the group of most highly trained people, or almost highly trained people. So they have like 5 degrees, or they've started 10 different courses and never quite finished them. And the reason being is because they're so impacted by their environment or media or what their friends are doing or what their family wants for them, that they start off on this journey, on this path that may not actually resonate with themselves. So if you're hanging out with a hairdresser for a while, you think, oh, I'll be a hairdresser. And then you get into it and think, oh, this isn't really for me. And then, so we can kind of bounce around. One of the good things about that, I guess, is that we are multi-skilled, right? We are able to learn very quickly because we absorb concepts and information very, very quickly, and we're adaptable. So we're kind of like chameleons in a way, in the way that we can use those different skills and talents. I guess the challenge is to not get overwhelmed with the choice. Yeah. And the confusion of what's going on in the external world compared to what's going on in our internal world.
And in your own path into being an entrepreneur and owning your empath, not as a curse,
yeah.
What were some of the biggest milestones in bringing yourself back to center and gaining clarity on your path?
Hand on heart, honestly, it's still a daily task because I have an immense ability to create. So I'm one of these empaths who have a million different ideas, right? And I get so passionate, and I can see these things folding out in front of me, and I'm going to change the world, and it's going to be amazing. But then, because I have so much creative energy, I tend to get, again, overwhelmed in the things that I create for myself. And so I have to really, I guess that's my task, to really stay in my body and really continue to ground myself and be really present in, okay, so that's a great idea, but am I really passionate about it? Does it put fire in my belly? Is that something that I have to do as a priority right now? And if it's not, then put it to the side. I mean, I guess my internal mantra is pacing, which I'm not great at, but it's about, doing some work, having a break, going meditating, standing outside in the sun, coming back in, doing some more work. Otherwise, we do tend to get lost in what it is that we're creating because we are so passionate about things.
I was just pondering over the law of gestation, which sounds very similar to that.
Perfect. Well, it is though with projects, it's like giving birth, isn't it? For women particularly, it's like this creation energy that comes in and that we just want to express it. And it can get really frustrating when other people don't operate as quickly as us or can't see things on the same level as us. And I don't know if your audience can relate to this, but I certainly have had this feeling to some degree in my own life. It's like you're a little bit ahead of the rest of people. And this isn't a judgment, it's just an observation of, so you might have an idea or a concept or an invention, but it might be 5 to 10 years ahead of everybody else or ahead of the market that you're in. And so that can really leave you questioning, oh, you know, did I get it wrong? Am I missing something? But it's not about that. You have to understand that empaths have access to, if I can put it like this, I guess a higher level of knowledge or information or inspiration or insight. Again, that's not a judgment. It's just my experience and my observation. And so then when we kind of bring that through into the world as a product or a service or an idea or a course or a book or whatever else it is, sometimes it takes people to catch up to us. Yeah. So you may actually find, as I have, that you always feel like people are copying you a few years after you've done something. And that's pretty typical for empaths. So all the empath entrepreneurs that are listening to that, don't allow that to stop your flow. Just know that you're one of the leaders in your industry and that you are always going to have people kind of duplicating you or being inspired by you, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Don't they say that that's the biggest form of compliment? Yeah, so.
And talking about flow in our business, could you share some of your ways of doing your business, being in your business when it comes to the feminine energy and to listening to those different waves within you or within the world around us?
Yes. Again, this is, I guess, non-conventional in the way that I run a business. So I work not only with pacing, but with rhythm. So to me, the whole 9 to 5, you have to be there sitting in front of a desk doesn't work, because if I don't feel that inspiration or that creativity, particularly when I'm creating something new, it's not going to happen. So in a way, I'm wasting my time just kind of sitting in front of the computer waiting for things to come. So when I feel that level of inspiration when I'm creating something new, that's when I know, I guess, it's time to go or it's time to work. And so I really try and be very much in tune with the rhythms of my own intuition and my own inspiration and also my own physical body. So, doing things like yoga or walking or being outside in the sunshine are also very important to be able to sustain and support that creative energy and that creative flow. I've never done any tech training, and yet I've built 3 websites, including a learning management system. It's not my passion to do it, but it's a necessary thing. And I think I bring that up because I think sometimes empaths can take on too much because we learn quite quickly. And this has perhaps been one of my challenges. I think, I'll just learn how to do it myself, right? Rather than bothering asking somebody else to do it, I'll just figure it out, which is great, but it's not necessarily the thing that you're passionate about. Like building websites, it's not really the thing I'm passionate about. I can do it, yes. But am I passionate about it? No. And so I guess the advice I would give around that in my own learnings is to really stay with the things that you're good at and that put fire in your belly. And if you can afford to, pay other people to do, your accounting and your bookkeeping and all of that, which I certainly do. But so that you can be authentic with yourself as well as an entrepreneur, and you're not doing 10 people's jobs as a business owner, because that's the true nature of the feminine flow and the feminine rhythm. We understand, as our bodies are telling us, if we're in tune with our bodies, that there is a time for expression of creation, and that there's a time for hibernation and rest, and that we have to work with that. Otherwise, we become, in a way, too masculine in our energy, which works for men, but we're not men, we're women. So, in a way, it's kind of going against our true nature. And in my experience, it leaves us with health issues and emotional challenges, and particularly if you're highly sensitive, you have that on top of it as well. So it can be very, very challenging if we're not in that natural feminine rhythm and flow, not only in our lives, but when we're coming to our businesses and we're coming to work.
Mm-hmm. And in your experience, how do intuition in men and women differ, if they do?
I think they do. I think the gap is slowly it's closing slowly. I think we'll put it this way. If I just look at the evidence, I guess, in my business, 97% of people that I work with are women, right? And I estimate that I've done probably over 10,000 client sessions in my career. So that's a fairly large proportion of women who feel drawn to either having a session with me or, developing themselves. And really, when I see people coming in for a client session, that's actually them wanting to engage in a higher aspect of themselves, to be honest. It's not necessarily so much about me as it is about themselves. And so I feel that women have a natural predisposition to be more open to the concept of intuition. Yeah. Men have been culturally trained otherwise, that it's not manly or strong, or that they run mostly off their instinctive energy rather than their intuitive energy. But like I said, I feel like that is slowly changing as men are, and I hate to say this, but it feels culturally like men are given permission to be more feeling and more sensitive and more connected to their emotional world. And intuition isn't just about, and sensitivity isn't about being weak or about being soft. And in fact, you have to have a very strong sense of self to be able to determine or discern intuitive information versus instinct, because it's very different. Instinct is physical, it's physiological, it's a very strong impulse, whereas intuition is quite subtle. And so you have to actually train yourself to be able to create the space internally to get that intuitive intelligence or information that's coming through. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, culturally, both men and women at the moment, we're not really trained to be still. We're not trained to be quiet. We are constantly taken into the external world through technology and work and IT and all of those kinds of things. So, I think definitely we all have the ability. Some of us just need to work at it more than others.
I'd love for you to share some tips or insights on how to create that inner space. And especially, I was quite taken by the book that you're working on right now, which is for empaths living in city and dealing with that energy. So if you can bring that in, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Okay, so empaths living in the city. It's a twofold kind of experience, because what I've noticed is that most of us run this fantasy of kind of living out in the country by ourselves, and with solar panels on the roof of our cottage, surrounded by our veggie gardens and our animals and, all of that kind of thing. And that in a way, part of our heart and our soul really wants that to be separate from people and to just be in our safe little space. But what I know to be true is that for most empaths, that's actually really unhealthy. So when we separate from people, we actually can go downhill. So for me, it's really about forming that balance of being surrounded by, well, I live in Sydney, Australia. So there's millions and millions of people here. It's a pretty intense, busy city. So I've had to learn tactics and techniques, as you were talking about, to be able to sustain my energy whilst I live here. Now, one of those things that I do is to not, okay, so there's a couple of things. Number one is every thought that I think isn't necessarily true, and every feeling that I have isn't necessarily true. And I think empaths get really caught up in that. They think, oh my gosh, I've got a little tiny feeling. What does that mean? And why is that there? And what happened? And so we go into over-analysis. Now, when we go into over-analysis, what tends to take place is that energy, thought form, emotion, whatever it is, becomes ours. Because now we've consciously engaged with it, and it's now ours to process. So if you are an empath living in the city or wherever else you're living, it's a really good idea to see yourself like a sponge, I guess, right? So our natural way that we flow is we absorb, right? We absorb information, we absorb emotions, we absorb energies from the external world. Now, the next step is to learn how to let it go so that you're not hanging on to it, that you're not being overwhelmed by it, that you're not allowing your instinctive responses to respond over something that may not have anything to do with you. And so I use a couple of different just intentions and visualizations that I imagine me absorbing that stuff in. And because I've been doing this for so many years, I don't even really have to consciously think about it anymore because that's how my energy is set up. But I absorb it in and then I drop it down into the earth. And so you can do that with your breath, you can do that through movement, you can do that with your clear and strong intention. And even if you can't really visualize it, just pretend, just intend that that's what's happening. And so if you continue to do that, you're actually getting rid of all the other people's stuff around you. And what is left is there for you to, I guess, process. It's your own stuff, right? Because we all have our own stuff, right? And that helps us because we're, in a way, it's like we're human vacuum cleaners. I know it sounds terrible, but in a way, that's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of cleaning up the mess here. And so we really need to be in alignment with that reality and accept that that's part of the reason we're alive here at the moment. And it is intense and there's a lot going on. So it is challenging and tricky.
Yeah, I love that there's no fighting mode in what you're offering us to do. No. And I was actually wondering in the last few sentences if a lot of that insight that you've built for yourself in that capacity came from your work with people who were on their way towards death. What were the biggest insights with that?
Really, I guess about surrendering. Yeah. And I saw this when, those patients were passing away. And as a nurse, you wanted to do everything that you could to help them. In a way, instinctively, you wanted to keep them alive, even though obviously they were passing away. And one of the things that stood out to me time and time again was that these patients would actually refuse our help. Mm-hmm. So that they had come to a point of acceptance and surrender within themselves. And that's not giving up, that's surrendering. And that really taught me a very valuable lesson because I see so many empaths and highly sensitive people constantly in fight or flight or freeze mode. They're totally run by their survival instincts. And that I'm constantly being asked, how do you protect yourself? How do you, and I don't, is the simple answer. I don't protect myself because I don't get into that paradigm of there's something to be protected from. Yeah. It's more about living in the flow and surrendering to your high sensitivity. And again, by that, I mean accepting it fully and completely. That will help you actually be able to function in this world. Because I'm here to tell you, the people that struggle the most with their sensitivities are the ones that are fighting it, are the ones that feel that they have to defend themselves, and are the ones that feel like there's something wrong with them, that there's something to be fixed, that there's something to be medicated or changed, or yeah. So when you actually go into full acceptance of, okay, so I have these high sensitivities, and maybe it might not have been what I'd consciously chosen, but it's who I am. And I think this is an important point, just quickly, that genetically we're different. This isn't some kind of woo-woo, supernatural concept. They've done the research. We have different genomes. We process information differently. It's not something that you can get away from. So in that surrender and acceptance, that's where your power is. If you really accept, okay, I do have heightened sensitivities, how do I work with it rather than trying to mask it or disguise it or dumb it down to make other people feel comfortable around me? And then when you find that answer, that's where you're going to have your empowerment. That's when worlds are going to open up to you in terms of business, relationships, health and well-being, all of those things. But the more you struggle against it, the harder it's going to be. From my experience, trust me on this.
You've been sharing so many powerful and delicious nuggets with us. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And to take it one step further, you're offering our audience a 1-month membership to your Empath Alliance tribe. Could you please tell us about it?
Yeah. So I, along my journey, I'd created all of this content, all of these courses, specifically for empaths and highly sensitive people. And I thought, it just makes sense to put them all together in the same place where empaths and highly sensitive people can come and get support and talk to each other, or not, as the case may be, if that's not your thing, but also have access to the content. So different courses. So I have Empath's Self-Mastery. I have Boot Camp for highly sensitive people. I have just a whole other range of smaller courses. We have podcasts. We have books, meditations, just a whole bunch of stuff. I've got tribe tips, where it's me just giving tips every week or so about things that you can do about living in the city, or you're going to the shopping mall, or those kinds of things, practical stuff, right, that we want to know. And so I'm really thrilled to give you guys month's free membership, so you can come in, have a look around, absolutely zero obligation, connect with people, share, enjoy some of the courses, and then we can go from there. So super thrilled to be able to offer that to you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
See you, Sabine. Bye, everybody.